Hi everyone, my name is Mason and I work for Comet Backup here in New Zealand. Welcome along to the Leda release webinar. I'm here to talk for about half an hour about our latest software release, what we've been working on, and all the new and exciting changes from the last quarter. So I've been regularly running this webinar series that showcases the latest and greatest new features Comet has to offer. Back in 2021, we ran these webinars every month, but at the start of last year, 2022, we switched to publishing a monthly blog post about what's new. And this info webinar series now runs once a quarter related to the major quarterly software releases that we do. So if you count the whole webinar series, then this is episode 24. But regardless of what our schedule is, it's all on the webinar platform. You can subscribe to notifications about when we go live. My talk today will probably be about 30 minutes, and that's including some time for questions at the end. So if you're watching this live on our webinar platform, I'm coming to you live. It's 9 a.m. here in New Zealand. Then there is a chat widget. You can click the button at the bottom of the window to pop it open. And if you have any questions as we go, just write them in and I'll do my best to answer them at the end. So about 30 minutes, maybe a bit less. Everyone's busy, so I'll keep it short. I hope you've got a coffee, get settled in, and I'll just press on with things. So as you've seen from the title, today I'm going to talk about Comet 23.2 Leda, our latest and greatest software release version. So the 23.2 version number, it's the year and the month. So we release new Comet versions every week under the Voyager release track. And then every quarter, 4 times a year, we take all of our regular Voyager development and we roll it up into these quarterly milestone releases. And that's your fixed point to build on and offer to your customers, and we'll support it with patches and in the tickets. And another quarter's just flown by, and today I'm going to recap all of the new things you can expect when upgrading to Comet 23.2 Leda. So what you're seeing here in the picture, this is Leda. This is one of the distant moons of Jupiter. It's a very far distance from Earth. It's not really bright, so it's quite hard to see. It's very difficult for the observatory to take this photo. All of our software code names come from the solar system. So our Voyager releases, named after the Voyager spacecraft, it started with Mercury. Our code name started with Mercury in the inner solar system a few years ago now. And we've been slowly moving using names from further and further outward into the outer planets and moons. After a few years of that, we reached Jupiter. And last quarter in my previous webinar, I said that Jupiter's got 80 moons. But some exciting news is that last month, in February just gone, a lot of new announcements were made in the astronomy sort of community, and now Jupiter is known to have 92 moons. So a lot of brand new discoveries of these moons of Jupiter still being discovered today. And they're actually discovering new moons faster than we're using the code names, so maybe we'll be here a while. But as for Leda, it's not one of the new moons. It was discovered back in the 1970s, which is pretty impressive for how not bright it is. Jupiter is the Roman name for Zeus in Greek, and this moon is named after the ancient Greek mythological figure from the Leda and the Swan story, which featuring Zeus, of course. And in these myths, Leda was the mother of Helen of Troy, a key figure in the Trojan War, obviously from the Iliad and the Odyssey and things like that. But enough about the name. It's just the code name we're using. Enough about the name. What about the features? We've counted 7 features and 12 enhancements this quarter for Leda. The full changelogs are available on our website in the release notes section. And today I'll just walk you through some of the main ones, starting off with Granular Restore for Hyper-V. So Comet has an exciting new feature for the Hyper-V protected item type. When restoring a Hyper-V backup job, there's now an option to choose a granular restore of individual files from inside a disk VHDX file. So if you've used Comet's disk image protected item type, it works pretty much the same way. By default, this top option here will restore all of Hyper-V's files, the VHDX files, but also VMRS, VMCX, and so on, that you can import the VM as a whole back into Hyper-V or some other hypervisor. But now you can also choose the second Restore Files and Folders radio button option. And if you click the next button, you'll just bring up the normal file browser, and where you see a VHDX file, it shows up as a folder instead of a file, and you can just go into the VHDX. It'll show up as if it's a folder, allowing you to navigate sort of inside the interior partitions and select files. So it does support multiple partitions inside of VHDX. It understands GPT, MBR, To put it into Hyper-V terminology, that's the same as saying it supports Hyper-V Gen 1 and Hyper-V Gen 2 partition table layouts. And another neat thing about this is no new backup jobs are required. So this new option to restore single files is able to parse even older existing Hyper-V backup job snapshots. So if you've taken a backup job with an older version of Comet, you're not required to take new backup job snapshots, so we can pick out individual files from even inside an existing backup job. This is NTFS only for now. Obviously, the standard Windows file system and most Hyper-V workloads are going to be Windows-based, so this is okay for now. But just to note, there's no support for Linux file systems in this particular version. But watch this space. And there's one more interesting to note, which is related to checkpoints. This feature browsers inside the base checkpoint only. So if you're using Hyper-V checkpoints and there are checkpoints present within the backed up snapshot, you'll only today you'll only be able to do a granular file restore from inside the oldest base Hyper-V checkpoint. That's to do with the way VHDX and AVHDX differencing disks work just in the first release of this feature. But as I said earlier, watch the space. And so overall, basically the same principle as granular single file restore from disk image. It's using the same underlying core technology, although we've made some improvements. So in the latest 23.2 Leda, granular restore now works better with NTFS compressed files. It works better with disk fragmentation. It works better with multiple virtual disks inside a single protected item. And there's all of these improvements for our single file granular restore are shared across both the Hyper-V granular restore and also the disk image granular restore. So you can expect that these will share in the future. And when we add Linux file system support, it will work on both. So that's very exciting. And as a quick interlude, the Hyper-V granular restore was a highly upvoted feature on our feature voting page. So if you haven't seen this system before, it's available from the resources menu in account.cometbackup.com. You can request new features or upvote features that other people have requested. And if you upvote or comment on a feature, you can get notified when the feature is completed or if anything, significant changes with it. So it's a great way to get notified when new features are available. We do look at the system often. We do develop ideas from in here. When I looked at this yesterday, we were up to 147 completed features, which is quite a lot. And we do look at the system often to help guide and prioritize what we should be developing next. Now, it's not the only thing we look at, but it does play an important part, so please check it out. Here's another feature we completed this quarter that was also a highly upvoted feature request: admin level email reporting. So as a Comet server administrator, it's now possible to configure top-level email reports that can cover multiple customers with a single email report. Now, there are several use cases for this feature. One particular one would be if you have a group of customers that are all somewhat related. So until now, Comet's email reports have been per user. So if you have maybe there's a company with 3 branch offices and you have 3 user accounts for the 3 offices of a single company, it's now possible to make a single email report that covers that whole group of 3 user accounts. Another common use case is technician summaries. So you could get a daily report of all your customers' backup statuses all at once, which is fantastic if you have an email-oriented workflow. And of course, it can be filtered with all of the usual Comet filter settings, such as show me only the warnings and only the errors, or show me only the jobs that exceeded their quota, or email those to a junior technician, something like that. There's a lot of possibilities. And actually, another use case is the bulk alerting integration. So if you're using third-party tools such as Backup Radar or Check Central, where how they work is you send them an email of every backup job, and these third-party tools will scan the subject line and make sure that success is in the subject line every day and tell you if it doesn't show up. And previously, you would have to set this up for every single customer. But now with a reporting setup at the global admin level, you can set this up once for all customers. And it's for Backup Radar, Check Central, and many other apps that work by that sort of email scanning, checking, validation sort of process. Just as a side note, perhaps not, I should stop putting Backup Radar on this list, since Backup Radar added direct API integration with Comet Backup late last year, which is absolutely fantastic and makes it even easier to set up. But that's just a side note, not specifically talking about that today. For the email reports, admin email reporting, you access this from the Comet server web interface on the settings page and then email reporting tab. So this settings screen, previously it contained only this email configuration, such as your SMTP server and who's it sending from, the display name. Now just below these settings, the page now contains additional email related settings, including your custom reports. So use the add and edit buttons here to create a new sort of global multi-customer report using the same configuration options that you're familiar with from your existing per user email report. So when you click to create a new report, the first thing you get is this report settings dialog where you enter a target email address, and then the big green button opens Comet's normal email dialog with all the templates and filters in it. So this is a pretty big and complicated filter, or if you just leave all of this blank, you'll include all customers. So that's good for the sort of bulk alerting integrations or the technician summaries. Just leave the filter blank and you'll get everything. Or you can add these sort of username equals something filters. And here in this screenshot, I'm using a group so that at least one of these rules has to match. So that's any username in that group. And so that lets you find a specific group of multiple user accounts and send the report to their designated contact. So both the summary table and immediate job notification report types are available. So you can achieve both these kind of daily summary, weekly summary reports, or you can have the entire stream of whole job log notifications be emailed directly to a monitoring email address. It's your choice. But that's not all. There's more. Speaking of these two templates, this leads me into another email related topic, which is we have extended the email system to include two additional new email report templates. They are the recent activity email report and the grouped status email report. So these two new template options are available both for individual users and also as part of the new multi-customer email report system. Being able to receive the recent activity page by email was a highly requested feature from our feature voting system. So thank you to everyone who upvoted that and requested that in various different forms and ways, and we're very pleased to be able to deliver this to everyone. Now, of course, email clients aren't as fancy as web browsers. There's a few limitations and restrictions on what we can do inside an email. It can't be that interactive. And so in the web version of the recent activity page, you can sort of hover over these sections and it shows a breakdown of the different types, and you can click on them for more detail. It's all a bit harder to do from email. So we've got a legend table at the bottom of the recent activity email report that explains the colors in more detail. But if in order to do anything sort of more interactive, you'll have to jump into the Comet server web interface for more detail. But it is fantastic to get this level of detail right in your inbox. And just looking at the second one, the group status report, this is a pretty clear-cut, cut and dry summary of all of the jobs for each device in the whole custom time period. So the recent activity is always 10 days wide, same as the web interface actually. And for the group status, you can pick and choose the time bounds that you're searching for. So they do have to be summarized in some way in order to fit the sort of width. This is already quite a wide email document. So here, for the recent activity, it's clamped to 10 days for sort of those width restriction reasons, and for the group status report, we're achieving that width by always grouping by the status. So you can see at a glance with the color coding if you have any errors to investigate or any more specific detailed job statuses. And setting them up is very simple. You just go to configure any email report and change this top drop down to one of the new options. So there's 4 options now. This full job report, the summary table at the bottom, and now there's 2 new ones as well. And you can use the preview button here to quickly check your custom filters when doing this from the end user context. Now, if you're watching this presentation on a high resolution screen, you might notice a second new feature in this screenshot, which is this middle section, time span to report on. So another related feature, brand new feature for the email report system, is the new guidelines for time boundaries. So previously, up until now in Comet, when you're using the summary table report, all jobs from all time would be included in the report. And these reports can get quite long, especially if you're doing daily, hourly backup jobs. And users would have to configure an extra filter rule, so filter it and only show me jobs where the time since job start is less than 7 days, in order to restrict the search results to only find those recent jobs. And this is a really common thing to do, and it's kind of inconvenient. So just to make it easier for users and for administrators, there's this new option here, time span to report on. It's got previous day, previous week, previous month, and custom number of days. Very easy to use. Just set that default time boundary, and also just encourage you to make sure that it actually is configured rather than leaving you to discover these massive email reports by yourself. So that's it. I'll stop talking about email for a second and move on to Office 365 quota. So this is another new feature added in Comet 23.2 Leda. I want to explain this feature with a bit of background information to give a quick recap about Office 365 backup. So there is an Office 365 protected item type in Comet that allows you to back up an Office 365 tenant from your Comet backup device, and that includes mail, your email inboxes, contacts, calendars, OneDrive files, SharePoint sites, and so on. There's work to do with compression and encryption and deduplication. That work needs to run on a CPU somewhere, and so this is a protected item that runs on a Comet backup device. And that device could be an on-prem device that's also backing up a PC, or it could be an extra device that you, the MSP, run in the cloud somewhere, doesn't really matter. It runs backup jobs. It backs up the Office 365 tenant data in mailboxes, compresses, dedupes them, and then you can restore them and so on. And so at the time of writing, this protected item type comes with a booster charge of, right now it's $1.50 US per protected account. And of course, these are our wholesale prices for MSPs, service providers. You can charge your end customer any amount you want. When you select an Office 365 resource to back up, such as an employee mailbox or a shared OneDrive drive, all Office 365 users within the tenant who can access that resource are tagged as protected for the purposes of Comet billing. And so this is a pretty simple system. It scales with the size of your Office 365 tenant. However, we heard some feedback from MSPs that unexpected changes to their customers' Office 365 tenants are resulting in unexpected charges to the Comet balance. So to help mitigate this, we've introduced a new quota feature for the number of protected accounts covered by the protected item in a Comet user account profile. So if more mailboxes are added to the Office 365 tenant, and say you've selected, I just back up all mailboxes, the total number of protected accounts is going to increase. And ordinarily that would result in a billing increase. But now, if it exceeds the configured quota limit, then the backup job will not run, and that is to prevent any unintentional charges from being billed to your Comet account. So if a user has reached your limit of protected accounts, you can detect this because the backup jobs will all come back with the quota exceeded job status. And this job status is especially highlighted on the Comet server home screen. It can be seen on the search and user pages. And when I was talking about that group status email report template before, that's a whole separate column in that for quota exceeded job statuses. And so if you see this job status for a job, raise the quota limit, and also make sure you update the invoices that you're sending this customer to reflect their updated billing cost. So that's Office 365 quota. Another new feature in Comet 23.2 Leda is remote browse databases. So in the Comet Backup desktop app, when you're setting up a new protected item to back up databases on the PC, you can use open the app, protected item, select the database type, items tab, and then you can browse the content of the database server to select which databases you're backing up. This feature has been available in the Comet Backup desktop app for a long time now, but in the latest Comet 23.2 Leda, we've also made this available from the Comet server web interface. So you just click the green browse button. If the device is not online, you can still use the old system of entering the database's name manually to database names to include and exclude from the backup job. But it's great to just click the browse button, see the databases, and select them directly. It's much less error prone, much more intuitive. It's got a reasonably broad range of support, supports our MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, and MongoDB protected item types, and all of these work via the live connection. So this feature works by from the Comet server web interface, it reaches down and remotely controls a Comet backup device that has an active live connection back up to the Comet server. And so this allows you to remotely browse databases that are on local hosts, they're not publicly exposed, uh, from the device's network position, including on the LAN. So it definitely makes these protected item types much simpler and easier to configure. While I'm here talking about database backup, as a related feature, we've also upgraded the way that Comet Backup talks to a MongoDB database server. To quickly go into some detail about this, Comet used to require that you install and configure the Mongo Shell application before it could talk to your MongoDB server. But for new versions of MongoDB, it's pretty hard to find the right matching version of this pretty important utility program. So we've removed and integrated that dependency. It's no longer required by Comet. So that's one less step when setting up a MongoDB protected item type. So MongoDB backup should now be a lot more reliable and easy to use. Much more. This is my last slide. Just skimming through some more interesting changes for Comet that have appeared in Comet 23.2 Leda this quarter. We have a new Polish translation for Comet, and a very big thank you to the partner from Poland who helped us and spent their valuable time helping translate Comet into the Polish language. It's a nice picture of Warsaw here, obviously the capital of Poland. And this Polish translation will be the 15th language option in Comet. So we've got a really good process, really good infrastructure now for internationalizing Comet and getting the backup app turned into other languages. But as well as that, we've got a good process for helping and working together. So if you're interested in helping translate Comet into another language, just get in touch. All the text and instructions are available on our GitHub account, github.com/cometbackup/translations. And, you know, it's really cool. It's cool for you, cool for us. It can be a wonderful thing to have Comet available in your local language for your local customer base. Another new enhancement in Comet, automatic new protected item. So in the latest version of Comet Backup, when you register a device for the first time, it doesn't have any protected items. You can see just on the edge of the screenshot here. Of course, this area of the app is blank at start. So you've given the installer to a customer, they install it, and then what? Maybe they don't know what to do. A lot of MSPs are, high touch. They'll remotely manage and install everything, and a lot of MSPs are low touch, and they'll just throw the installer away and give the installer to the customer, let them figure it out. So for people like that, um, you run the installer, you see this big empty list of protected items. You're not sure what to do. And so now this wizard creation dialog now opens automatically on the first installation. Just makes it a little bit easier to use, pop this thing up automatically, a bit less confusion, just guides you straight into adding your first protected item. Delete custom snapshot selection. So Comet normally deletes old backup job snapshots automatically based on your retention pass rules. So that's automatic. Retention passes happen at the end of most backup jobs. You'll say, I want to keep the last 30 days worth of backup job history, or the last 90 days worth of backup job history, or any sort of more complicated weekly, monthly thing. And Comet will just take care of it. But from time to time, you may want to manually delete old backup jobs, maybe to free up space, maybe for you accidentally backed up something really big, all sorts of reasons. And so you can delete additional old backup job snapshots, and you can do this today. You can do this in old versions of Comet for a while now, from the Comet Backup desktop app, or remotely via remote controlling a connected device from the Comet server web interface. And normally what you do is you head to the restore dialog, and in the Comet Backup desktop app, you can right-click a snapshot and choose to delete it, or you can right-click a whole protected item and choose to delete all snapshots of that protected item. Sometimes, however, you want to do something more different, more custom, and now we've made this extra option available that allows you to pick and choose multiple snapshots for deletion across multiple protected items. So a bit more advanced, but also a bit more flexible in terms of finding the exact snapshot by ID and things like that. Count Jobs API. So we have a great API for Comet Server. Now the Comet Server web interface is fully API driven. Anything that you can do from the Comet Server web interface could potentially be automated through the Comet Server API. So if you check out our API guide and our documentation, we've got sample code and SDKs for several different programming languages, and we even have a YouTube tutorial. Now there are many additions to the API throughout the quarter leading up to Comet 23.2 later. And every new feature discussed today is available in the API. Plus there's one extra new API here, which is to count the total number of backup jobs meeting a search criteria. And this was requested by an enterprise partner to help optimize their API usage to improve their product's responsiveness. But it's generally a useful feature and now available to everyone. Toggle Gradient MSP alerts. So Gradient MSP is an external third-party service that if you sign up for them, Comet can push your user account information to Gradient, and then you also connect up your RMM systems such as Autotask, Synchro, ConnectWise, and many more. And then from the Gradient web interface, you can sort of line them up. You line up your Comet user accounts and storage with the invoices in your RMM, and you can see underbilling, overbilling, or there's extra users who aren't being billed, and sync the latest account usage information from Comet into your RMM, so the customers are billed properly. It's a really cool system if you're using a supported RMM as well as Comet, just to make sure you're not missing out on billing your customers correctly. The latest versions of Comet, we've made several enhancements to this. It's more efficient, it's more optimized about the information that gets sent, and there's this new toggle at the bottom to control whether failed backup job alerts are also pushed through to the RMM or not. So if your RMM is just there for invoicing, or if you're also using it as a monitoring sort of pane of glass, it's great to choose whether or not those alerts get pushed through as well. So that's all I have today. Are there any questions? So just to recap, I talked about Granular. I can see there's some questions already. But just to recap, I talked about Granular single file restore for Hyper-V that lets you restore single files and folders, even from a previous old Hyper-V backup job. I talked about the new option to send email reports from an admin sort of context, so you can send emails to all your technicians or to groups of customers or BCC everything to an external system. There's also the brand new recent activity email template and group status email template. There's that new email option to set up time boundaries. You can now set quotas for the maximum Office 365 protected accounts. There's the new ability to remotely browse and select MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, and MongoDB databases for backup remotely from the Comet Server web interface via the live connection. And of course, the new Polish translation and automatically popping up the protected item dialog if you don't have any protected items, Gradient MSP, and a few other things besides. So feel free to use the questions tab. I can see a couple questions here already. So we have a question here. Is it possible to have most of my clients on the stable track and have one or two on the Voyager track? I am self-hosted. Okay, so one way to do this is to have two Comet servers. It doesn't cost you anything to have an extra Comet server. Another way to do it is to upgrade the Comet server to the latest Voyager, but then don't push the client upgrades to all your devices, because we do support having an older client on a newer Comet server. So that would be one way to achieve this. You'd install the quarterly version of Comet, upgrade all the devices to that quarterly version of Comet, and then install Voyager, and then only individually deploy the Voyager installer to specific devices. And that works fine. And it is supported to have an older client talking to a newer server. We can't necessarily guarantee the reverse, but older clients on a newer server are fine. The other thing you could do is commit to Voyager. If Voyager's fine, you could go full on into Voyager if you want. It's you're not really risking anything, I don't think. So that's another option for you. Another question here, is there anything on the roadmap to display the size of snapshots? Fascinating question. A little bit complicated because of deduplication. When you have one backup job snapshot and you take a second backup job snapshot and they all share the same files, how big is each one? If you back up the same 1 gigabyte of data twice, Comet only stores it once. And so when we're talking about the size of each snapshot, it's somewhat difficult to say clearly which one is bigger than the other. Well, they're really the same data. So in a sense, the question is really hard to make heads and tails of and show this information in a good way, because a lot of people think when you see the size, if I delete this snapshot, I'll save this much size. But of course, in a deduplicating environment, you don't save the size until the last reference to that data is gone. And so it's potentially pretty confusing. There is a way to see the size of snapshots if you're happy with just seeing the size of sort of the latest snapshot versus the historic snapshots, and that is in the Comet server web interface as an admin. If you look at the user's storage vaults and in so users detail page, storage vaults tab, and then if you look at the size column is often clickable. You click on the size, you'll get a pop-up, and this pop-up breaks down the size of the storage vault based on what protected items and snapshots are using the size within that storage vault. And this is quite aggregated information, once again related to deduplication. It's just not that helpful to go into too much detail, because you can't necessarily save size by deleting a snapshot until all of that deduplication references have also been removed. So I hope that helps, but feel free to raise a support ticket or pop in another question if you need any more information. One more question. How do I feed Comet data into my RMM Datto? You know what? Let me just quickly double check live and see if Gradient supports Datto. They do support Datto Autotask and Datto Continuity. So you should be able to take the Gradient MSP approach and push the Comet data into Gradient and then have Gradient sync it up into Datto. Otherwise, you probably need to talk with us directly about making a direct API integration from the two systems, and we'll look and see what sort of, what's the best technical approach to take Comet data out of the Comet server API, which is all publicly available API, lots of SDKs, different programming languages, and see what sort of API Datto offers for pushing the data into Datto. And that will sort of create that two-way integration. So if you're a programmer, or if you can hire a programmer, or if you can reach out to us and make a case, we can talk the technical details about making it happen if the Gradient off-the-shelf approach doesn't work for you. But definitely have a look at Gradient MSP, give them a shot first, because they may be able to do what you want exactly. Any more questions? That might be all the questions we have time for today, but we still want to hear from you. If you have any questions at all, we're always happy to help out. We're more than happy to hear your questions by ticket through the usual support ticket system at account.cometbackup.com, or you can email us hello